Hey, Salut Friends. Today we are looking at Rose Cuir from Frederic Malle. This is a 2019 release created by Jean-Claude Ellena, one that he composed after leaving his position as the in-house perfumer at Hermès. Apparently, Ellena had agreed to create at least one fragrance per year for Malle during the early 2000s, and as such, there were many creations like the Bigara duo L'Eau d'Hiver Angélique sous la pluie, and he even started working on French Lover at the time, which was then finished by Pierre Bourdon. Later, when he came back and wanted to create something again with Malle, a fragrance called La Rose de Rochas, created by Rudnitska, supposedly was the reference to go with the rose theme. Seems like Frederic really loves rose, which is probably why he went with the theme, in spite of having 3 fragrances in the collection, which are generally considered rose fragrances: Portrait of a Lady, Une Rose and Lipstick Rose. Even the recent Acne Studios has some kind of futuristic laundry rose smell. Of course, it goes without saying, rose can be interpreted in many ways. Many perfumers say to this day that they discover something new with rose every time. Even recently, Lancôme launched 12 rose fragrances at the same time, which is a bit of an overkill, but we get the point. The surprising aspect is, when this one was announced, the brand openly came out and said that there is no actual rose in this fragrance. We will come back to that point. Leather was also not supposed to be a dominant note either, as per the name, and it is obvious after smelling the fragrance. Because of all these factors, it had different names before. Now coming to the smell itself, this one opens fresh and fruity with lots of bourbon geranium and blackcurrant, specially commissioned by Ellena for this fragrance. They have this juicy, somewhat bitter, minty green facet, which could be from the bourgeon cassis or blackcurrant buds, adding to the thorny, stemmy, green aspects. This licorice, wine-like, balsamic smell also comes through. Additionally, there is this fleshy, peach-like facet and a lemony, cooling, spicy facet accentuated by the timut pepper. Geranium is overall the dominant note for me, not only in the initial dry down but even with the overall scent. Additionally, I get inflections of the sappy galbanum and garden tomato leaves, which are not mentioned. All this to say, this is what is supposed to represent an illusion of a rose, or rather a deconstructed rose. Again, as the brand says, supposedly there is no real rose essence or absolute in the formula. This geranium, especially in overdose, is something new for Ellena, who usually maintains the lightness with his compositions. As the freshness subsides, the leather starts to reveal itself very slowly. There is no sign of leather at all initially. This is a fragrance that does change quite a bit from the initial stages further into the dry down. The leather accord is created by IBQ, which is reminiscent of classic fragrances like Knise 10 or Robert Piguet's Bondi. Here it is not as bombastic or dirty, more so a clean, nutty, earthy leather. The dry, woody vetiver also helps to lessen the intensity of the leather even more. I am reminded of fresh peanuts being plucked from the earth. In the final stages, the remnants of the geranium and the woody, earthy leather are what's left. It is not a completely fresh or transparent, watery fragrance, which Ellena is well known for. It has more body and fluidity to it without being completely overbearing or weighing you down, while still being a simple fragrance. Apparently, there are only 15 key materials in it, which would take quite the skill to pull off a fully satisfactory fragrance like this. The performance is pretty good, lasts a good 8 hours with an overall moderate projection, really year-round, anytime, any season, occasion kind of fragrance. Though this was made with women in mind, I think it's perfectly unisex in the traditional sense. Overall, I quite like this fragrance. It was divisive when it was first released, in part because of the naming. Some people don't get either the rose or the leather in it, so I went in with an open mind just to experience what it has to offer, and I was not disappointed. Of course, like I said, it is not a traditional leather or even a rose leather fragrance, which was kind of a mini trend in the late 2010s, with many brands doing it, probably from getting bored of those Rose Oud combos. This for me is in part like an Hermes composition from Elena because of the aspects that are underplayed. In fact, there are hints of scents like Rose Cuir from the Hermes collection, and particularly this one, Kelly Kalesh, also made by Elena of course, which also happens to be a rose leather. A few years before this, Christine Nagel, his successor, also did a rose leather for her first release with the stunning Gallo d'Hermes. The other interesting part is this old school earthy leather, which we have not seen that much in recent times, making an appearance here, which neatly brings me back to the subject of naming that I mentioned. It was not originally supposed to explicitly reflect the keynotes and be called as Rose Cuir. The working name was Rose Rebelle, which is mentioned in the Frederic Malle book, where there are extracts of actual text messages shared between Malle and Elena. It was named that because initially the idea involved animalics like civet, castoreum and oud, which is interesting because one, it is not Jean-Claude Elena's style, and two, because we had the moon from the Desert Gems collection the same year, which is a fruity Rose Oud. This makes me speculate if this was ever thought of as a Desert Gem release. Of course, the idea was later dropped and it was called Rose Mistral, named after this romanticized cold wind current that blows from the south of France called Mistral. The main point of conversation around Mistral is how it keeps the sky clear for the most part in the south as opposed to the rest of France. Having experienced it, I think it is a much more apt name for this bright, breezy, cool impression of a rose contrasted by the somber leather. Certainly one of the brighter spots among the brand's releases in the last 5 years. Of course, Jean-Claude Elena also did what I think is the last convincing creation for Malle before he left the brand with Heaven Can Wait. Would I have liked to have seen more collaborations between them? Of course. But on some occasions, leaving us wanting more is better. So there you have it, my thoughts on Rose Cuir from Frederic Malle. Thanks for watching, take care and ciao.